It's all available on internet. I forget his name. He said the greatest quality of India is that it dominated the mind of China for 2000 years without sending one soldier out and without sending one evangelist out. It is the Chinese who sent their people, learned Buddhism from there and imported it there. You never attempted to convert anyone. You never attempted to bring anyone to your way of thinking. You lived a way which was so attractive to people. They try to learn from you. Are you willing to position yourself as that India? Or are you going to position yourself with civilizations whose change has no continuity, whose evolution has no sustainability? I'll just go into the American economic and financial model to which Mr. Godrej adverted to. The financial structure of America was supposed to be one of the most efficient. In fact, in his book, The Turbulent Times, Alan Greenspan said, the whole world is stunned as to how America, which is not doing any meaningful saving at all, is able to live and live well. And it's of course true, Asia is generating 3/4 of the global savings. And it is true that we are borrowing 3/4 of the global savings. And you are all laughing, he was very serious. He said that these poor people are saving. But what will they do with their savings if we don't borrow? They must have avenues for investment, you know. And we borrow and make their savings meaningful, and these poor people save. Very words, huh? It's not poor people. He says insecure people. These insecure people say because they have an unenlightened government, which do not take care of the unemployed people, infirm people, aged people. They don't have meaningful social security systems. And because we have all this, our people need not save. And not only they need not save, they can borrow and spend. And it is only insecure societies where unenlightened governments function, they have to save. This was the economic model. And you know what happened to that? I will just give you certain stunning facts which all of us should know about the American economy. You know, the American economy from 1976 to 2009, this is the transformation period of not American economy or the world economy, but the economic thinking, economic theories of the world, which I will advert to when you talk about change and sustainable change. The change which occurred in economics, economic development, economic theories have been proved, accepted, admitted to be unsustainable. That's what I'm coming to. Between 1976 and 2009, the US public debt rose up by 39 times and their GDP by 14 times. And their external debt grew by 137 times in this period. This is the macroeconomic picture for which there is a microeconomic cause of an economic model which told the people you need not save. You spend. And that was glorified as a consumption-based lifestyle. And with the result, American economy, which grew in power and influence, lost its base. The families became bankrupt. Economy became strong at the cost of the families. And throughout this 20-year discourse, those who are familiar with economic theories, they will know that the Japanese banking model was derided as inefficient, incompetent. And this kind of banking system is useless for market economy. Market economy means resources should be distributed by market. Stock markets, bond markets, derivatives. This is the kind of discourse which was going on the one hand, but Japan was holding on to its own model. It was never giving it up. It was a bank-driven model. It was not a market-driven model. They had aligned the bank and the market and the community and the society and the family and culture and tradition and produced another brand of capitalism which did not have anything in common, though it had everything meaningfully to deal with the Western market system. This was studied. And when in 2009, the whole world was shaking, Japan, which was abused for so long, you look at the Japanese Bank of Japan's website, there was only one sentence. The whole world is in turmoil. Japan is safe. And the Bank of International Settlements, in which the Japanese central bank officials wrote an article. This article is worth reading, in which I quote for you 2 paragraphs. The Japanese households prefer bank investments. The bank investment in Japan yields nothing. 5-year bank deposit yields 0.8% interest. And the banks in Japan, in order to avoid a deflationary tendencies, advised by the whole world that you must keep on cutting down the rate of interest so as to diseconomize, so as to make it uneconomic people to save and make them spend. So the Japanese economists, central bank began cutting down the rate of interest from 1992 when Japan went into deflation, from 5% to 4% to 3% to 2% to 1%. The Japanese did not spend. Then the Japanese central bank said, we will give you no interest. The people did not spend. They were saving. In 2001, the central bank said, it is not only we will not give you interest, you have to give interest for us to keep your money. Even then they didn't spend. %51% of the Japanese savings is in bank deposits of 0.8% interest or less, or by paying interest to the bank. Japan says, why do Japanese households prefer deposits so much over risky financial assets? When all financial instruments, well developed, on par with any Western market, are freely traded in Japan, the equity investment of the Japanese household sector is just 9%. In India, the annual savings which is diverted to stock market, 3%. The entire BSE index of 500 companies, it represents 4% of India's GDP. The BSE Sensex represents 1% of India's GDP. But we want to understand India through Sensex. We want to understand India through stock market. You can't understand Japan through stock market. You can't understand India through stock market, because the established situation today is, in all family-based societies, stock markets are not the principal means of raising and distributing resources. It is only the banks. And so he says, we would thus argue, the authors say, this article appeared in 2009, we would thus argue that the conservative approach to debt taken by the Japanese households mitigated the effects of decade-long economic slump. We would venture to say the Japanese household sector, far from being a shock originator, is a shock absorber. Exactly the reverse in America in 2008. This household sector became the shock originators, shock generators, not only for America, for the whole world. It was the American economic setback which transformed into a crisis, that transformed into a global meltdown. Even today, there is no means of recovery. All talks of recovery are false. The total amount of money committed, spent, futuristically committed, amounts to $23.7 trillion. This is what sustains. And there is no actual production or consumption to back this rise. I will just Economist magazine was cited by Mr. Godrej. It is the greatest opinion maker of the world from the Western perspective. This entire economic theory which was developed in the last 30 years or so, that you can have a financial model in which you make use of people, families, communities as factories to produce demand, and that is a successful model, has just collapsed. This is the economist issue of 2009 June. You can see how the economic textbook is melting. And I will tell you what they write. Of all the economic bubbles that have been pricked, few have burst more spectacularly than the reputation of economics itself. In the wake of the biggest economic calamity in 80 years, the economist's reputation has taken a beating. Their pronouncements are viewed with more skepticism than before. The profession itself is suffering from rancor and guilt. I will come to you as to how economic theories promoted this crisis. Paul Krugman, the winner of the Nobel Prize for Economics in 2008, argued that much of the past 30 years of macroeconomics was spectacularly useless at best and positively harmful at worst. Barry Eichengreen, a prominent American economic historian, says that the crisis has cast into doubt much of what we thought we knew about economics.